Welcome to the place where we learn about improv, 'cause public speaking can take you so far. Improbly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improbly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Impromptu Speaking podcast. So excited that you're joining us today for a fantastic episode. I'm calling it now. It's going to be a fantastic episode. We have an amazing guest on today, and I'm just so excited to talk with her. As you know, or maybe you don't know, maybe you're listening for the first time, but this podcast focuses on improv, public speaking, performance, communication, and creativity, and everything else in between. And I'm excited to see what areas we cover in today's episode with our guest today, because she really does it all. Maybe doesn't think about improv in a way, but I'm sure it comes up in her performances. So I'm excited to dive in and let's get to it. Let me tell you about our guest today, Karolyn Martin. Karolyn Martin is based in Boone, North Carolina. She started competing in the Miss America organization in 2019. In June of 2022, Karolyn earned the job of Miss North Carolina for the 2022-23 year. So we are talking with the current Miss North Carolina. That's so cool. Karolyn recently graduated with honors from Appalachian State University, and she plans to pursue a JD law degree and go on to work in business law to help empower women to reach their entrepreneurial goals. The scholarship she has earned from Miss America organization allowed her to become debt-free at the age of 22. Oh my God, that's amazing in itself. And I wanted to include that on her introduction because it's so cool. So awesome. Through her time as title holder, she has spoken to over 2,000 students in North Carolina and beyond about positive wellness and empowered several to speak up about their eating disorders and body image concerns. She's hosted multiple nationally attended wellness summits and self-published a cookbook for college students. I don't know where she finds the time, but it's amazing how she is helping people. Through nutrition education and positive wellness, Karolyn has impacted the lives of thousands of people across the country. Karolyn is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She loves musical theater, cooking, and spending time with her puppy, Ollie. Please welcome Miss North Carolina, Karolyn Martin.
Hi, Dayna. I need you to follow me around all the time. I mean, that's a great introduction. I feel like I need it every time I walk into a room.
I'm so impressed by this resume, this bio you have at your young 20s, and you're doing it all. You're really helping people. And I can see the passion in you when you talk and you speak. I mean, it's incredible what you're doing, Karolyn.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you. And for our listeners, Karolyn and I met. We have a kind of a fun connection here, a South Carolina connection. So we met when Karolyn was playing club volleyball for some of the local clubs in South Carolina and Columbia, South Carolina. So Magnum Volleyball and SC Midlands Volleyball. And I never got to coach Karolyn directly, but I think, Karolyn, I always coached a year younger than you or something, but I also would coach your sister at the little weekend clinics. And I just remember both
More
you and
power
your
to you
sister.
for that.
Right. Oh, I really enjoyed those. Those are fun. And I do remember both you and your sister were just so hardworking, so dedicated. You both were setters, and setters have to put in the extra time and work hard. And you did that. You really played the part there. It's so cool to see how you've grown from volleyball now to Miss North Carolina. That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny. I have not played volleyball since I graduated high school. I actually had a dream, now that you bring it up, that I was on a volleyball team last night, funny enough. So it was just preparing me to have all the volleyball knowledge in my brain for today, for sure.
I get some dreams like that too, where I'm like in coaching mode or something, and it's the
Yeah, yeah.
game's not going well or whatever.
Oh god.
It's very
I had one a few
stressful.
weeks ago that for some reason I don't know what this came from. I was on the NC State volleyball team and I was playing volleyball for the first time since I've graduated high school. And it was so bad, so bad. It was like a bit traumatic, this dream was, but last night's was better. So
Yeah, I hate dreams like that too, where you're not
yeah, it wasn't
prepared.
great. It wasn't great.
Well, and I mean, speaking of preparation, so how did your sports background, I mean, you were so
Yeah.
disciplined, so hardworking. How did that influence you in the Miss America competitions?
Yeah, I actually told this story in my Miss America interview just last month.
Oh,
When I
cool.
was I just got back from Miss America about a month ago. When I was in high school, I think my dad was pretty convinced that I was going to be an Olympic volleyball player. Because
Hmm.
every single morning, yeah, you've met my dad, so like this doesn't surprise you.
Yes.
Every single morning, he would wake me up at 5 a.m. and we would do strength and conditioning in the garage in the backyard. No joke. Like
Wow.
barbell, weightlifting, sprints. I would be like, dude, I was just up until like 1 a.m. finishing my homework and I have to go to school today and I have practice. Like I don't know what we're doing this for. But I think a lot of the things that I learned as an athlete, really, I was even learning before, just with my dad being in the military and having that background. He always taught us a lot about working hard and determination. And one of his favorite words was initiative, that we always needed to take initiative. And it took me a while as a teenager to really figure out what he meant by that. But for me being an athlete, one, it really taught me how to compete. And I think when you're in something like the Miss America organization, if you haven't competed in that way before, a lot of times the outcome can feel really personal. We're in an industry where whatever happens, it feels really like it's about us because you're being judged on what you say and, your talent and all of those things. But I knew as an athlete that the outcome isn't necessarily personal, it's a competition. And that's kind of how competitions play out. And I also knew how to compete, how to prepare for something, how to put my head down and do the work. And so I think really playing volleyball, being an athlete in general, has translated into a lot of other aspects of my life for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. Waking up at 5 in the
Yeah.
morning doing
What was that
calisthenics.
about, Dad? I'm sure he's going to listen. I want to know, what was that about? My sister didn't get the same treatment. It feels unfair, but here we are.
Burnout's a thing, and maybe sometimes doing too much. I know personally too. I definitely got burned out on volleyball. I think
See,
speaking of the
Dad?
Olympics, my 8th grade year, like they put like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I put, I'm gonna be in the Olympics playing volleyball. And clearly that didn't happen. Right. But it's still, I totally agree. It helps you so much along the way. It teaches you how to compete, how to embrace that pressure that's put on you and be clutch in the moment. And also, yeah, like there's going to be wins and losses in competition. You're
Right.
not always going to win. And how you handle those losses and it makes you stronger. And clearly it's helped
Yeah.
you
And I
so
mean,
much too.
for sure, for sure. I mean, I started playing volleyball, me and my sister both pretty young. And so for me, I think the advantage I had as opposed to some of my peers that were just, just had performed or just had competed in the Miss America organization or similar competitions is that I was comfortable in competition. And when things were difficult, I knew how to still perform, even when when there was a lot of pressure, when things were hard. I've been competing my whole life. And so it was really just kind of an extension of what I had been doing since I was 5 years old, but just in a different forum.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah. And I love just how talented you are across multiple ranges because, listen, when I played in high school, I was strictly sports, like volleyball, a little bit of basketball, and then I ended up quitting basketball just to do volleyball. And I was like sports focused, sports mindset, never had any artistic background at all. I just was like, I'm not good at painting. I've never sung before in front of people. I can't draw. I can't play music all because, and I look back on it now, all because I just wasn't quote unquote good at it from the start. I think sports, I was good at it. I picked it up easily. It felt natural. So it's like, I'm just going to keep on this path. And now as an adult, I'm like, I want to embrace the arts and I don't have to be good at it just to do it for fun. But I didn't have that in me So anyway, I love how like talented you are across multiple ranges.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I like a lot of young girls that perform. I started doing dance when I was young, and my dad kind of wanted me to do something that he thought was a more traditional sport, even though I think dance is an incredible sport and it takes a lot of athleticism,
Yes.
but that's what he wanted. And so he took me over like the course of several months to all of these different sporting events. So we went to a softball game. I was like out here in the outdoors in the elements, not my thing. He took me to some basketball games. I watched the cheerleaders the whole time. That my dad wasn't really feeling like cheer was going to be the thing that he wanted to watch every weekend. And I was like, these basketball players, like they're doing too much pushing and shoving. And that is not my thing. And so he finally takes me to an NC State volleyball game. So I wanted to play for NC State growing up. That's where I wanted to go to school to play volleyball. He takes me to my first game. It was an NC State volleyball game. I don't know. It might not have been NC State. We moved so much, but he took me to this volleyball game.
Right.
And afterwards, I'm like, I think I want to play volleyball, Dad. And he's like, after all these sports, why do you want to play volleyball? And I kid you not, 5 years old, I go, because they hug in the middle after every point. And so that is why I wanted to play volleyball. Yes, yes. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we were living maybe in Kansas at the time, and Kansas was playing Texas, and Destiny Hooker was playing for Texas at the time. And I met her, and I was too scared to take a picture with her because she's like 6 billion feet tall, and I was a tiny 5-year-old.
Yeah.
So that was my start with volleyball because they hugged in the middle after every point. And so I played volleyball for years. I played in elementary school through middle school and high school. And I always loved performing. I wanted to be on stage. My mom did theater growing up, and I did theater camps here and there. And I did one in South Carolina at the University of South Carolina. And I wanted to start taking voice lessons. Growing up, I was not a great singer. It was not like my original gift. Like a lot of, singers, we see them singing as kids and it's incredible. That was not me. If you pull up the footage, the childhood singing videos are really not things that need to see the light of day.
Right.
So my dad is a very honest man. And he'd be like, baby, this isn't for you. You don't need to sing anymore. It's okay. We can't be good at everything. But I was pretty determined. And so I asked him when I was in high school, I wanted to start taking voice lessons. And then I was practicing and just kept getting better. And your voice is a muscle. So I really believe that anyone can become a good singer. And my junior year, I played Belle in Beauty and the Beast in high school. It was my first like major role that I had. And then it kind of just kept going from there, where I kept practicing and kept performing. And then when I decided I was going to compete, it was really that, 6 years earlier that I had decided that it was something that I wanted to do and get better at, that allowed me to have a good enough talent to eventually win Miss North Carolina and not embarrass myself on the Miss America stage. So
I have a memory, and I don't know like the context of it, but I have a memory of being at the Plex in Columbia in the Sand Hills area. Maybe, yeah. Maybe you were coming to pick up your sister, or maybe you were waiting to practice. I was waiting for my team to practice, but I remember talking to you about this. And this might have been the last time I've seen you, because I think I moved right after that. Maybe you moved shortly after that too. But you said, you're like, I think I'm not going to play volleyball anymore. I want to focus on singing and getting into the pageants and getting into like Miss America stuff. Or at the time, you probably didn't say Miss America, but maybe like the local pageants. And I was blown away that you were so interested in that. And I had no idea, one, because we just see we see the girls in like volleyball context, and you don't get to learn a lot about their lives outside of volleyball. And just knowing that you were doing that too on the side, I was like, oh, that's so cool, because I could never do that. Like, I will never do that. That's amazing that you want to get into doing that. And I remember having that conversation with you sitting on the bleachers, and then it's like 5-6 years later, like, here you are, you've done it, you've done the thing.
Yeah. I mean, my senior year of high school is when I kind of started thinking that I wanted to compete. I had stopped playing volleyball for the most part at the time. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that I had played for so long at such a competitive level that I was just kind of like ready to move on. And it's so crazy because that part of my life feels like it was so long ago, and it really wasn't, but it was such a long part of my life, even longer than this like Miss America portion of my life will be. I played volleyball for like 10 plus years. I played for forever. It
Yeah.
feels like. So I was just kind of ready to move on and do something new. And I had a friend that had done our high school competition. And I had asked my mom if I could do it, and she said no my freshman year. And I know better than to ask my mother to do something again after she said no. So I dropped it. But I wanted to start doing the local competitions that qualify you to go to Miss North Carolina, since I was going to North Carolina for college. And so that's kind of where, I was like, all right, I'm going to try to do this. I needed extra scholarship money. And a lot of people don't know that the Miss America organization is the largest scholarship provider for women in the country. And so I have earned over almost $30,000 of scholarship because of the Miss America organization. Actually, I think coming back from Miss America, it might be $32,500 of scholarship.
Amazing.
From competing in just the 3 years that I've competed in this organization. And so I truly believe that there are so many parts of this organization that people don't know about and don't realize how beneficial they can be for you and your life and for your education. Just the opportunity to, at 22, going into law school this fall, not having any student loans is really amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I want to get into your journey too. But first, I did want to just ask you. So you mentioned like you've moved around a lot,
Sure.
and I think your bio says you were born in Alabama, but then you lived in, you said now Kansas, and then South Carolina,
everywhere.
North Carolina, everywhere. On your bio on your website, it says you attended 12 schools before even starting high school,
Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
is crazy. That stresses me out to even think about. But has that experience, made you more extroverted and really just made you be able to interact better with people from that?
I would say so. My mom tells this story about me in kindergarten. I would go to kindergarten every day, and I wouldn't speak all day long in kindergarten. I would just be absolutely silent, would not say a word. And the teachers were concerned about me. They thought there was something that like I needed to go to the doctor, and my parents needed to like figure out what was going on, because all year long I went to school and I did not speak. And then I would get in the car and it would just be like, and this is what I did today. And then I went on the playground and then I did this. And then I wouldn't shut up. I am naturally inclined to love to talk. But I was so shy as a kid. I hated being around people. And truly moving around forced me to get over it because I was moving every year, meeting new people. If I wanted to have any friends, I was going to have to open my mouth eventually. And so I guess figured it out. And now talking is my favorite hobby, I would say. And I have to speak in front of people every day. I mean, the job of Miss North Carolina is mostly to talk, whether that's, public speaking or speaking at school, speaking to individuals. Most of my job is running my mouth. And so it definitely was an asset. Also, the fact that I had to speak to different kinds of people all the time as a military child, as Miss North Carolina. And it was even something I talked about in my Miss America interview, having to move around and talk to different kinds of people every single day as Miss North Carolina is what you do. We have 100 counties in the state of North Carolina. And so there are all different kinds of people coming from different backgrounds, different economic levels, all of these different things that you have to be able to relate to, even if you personally don't have any understanding of what their background is. I might start my morning speaking at a press conference with the USDA about my social impact initiative, and then go to a kindergarten class and then go speak with political figures in the evening. And so you never know what the day is going to throw at you, but you have to be able to relate to all different kinds of audiences for sure.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's amazing. And just tailoring to your audience and making sure you're making sense to them. And I'm sure the kindergartners love it, and of course the adults love it when you come to speak to them. But I'm sure the little kids are very special to go speak to.
They think it's very cool. We have one of the positions in our organization is called the field director, and so they help with all of the local competitions, and they're kind of their point person. So they're all not going to the executive director. And I was speaking to one of our field directors' daughters the other day that I've met a few times, and she was with her brother who I've never met. And she turns to her brother and goes, "She's the queen." It was like, and he was like, no, you're not. And I didn't have my crown and sash on. So he's like, who is this? Who's my sister talking about? She's the queen.
Right.
And she goes, yes, she is. She's a crown and everything. So
Oh, that's so sweet.
you definitely make an impression on the little ones when you come in with the crown and sash. It's lots of fun.
And they'll remember that too. They'll remember how you made them feel, and
For
you
sure.
know, you're inspiring the next generation to, you know, get out there, put themselves out there. That's awesome.
I hope so.
Well, and I mean, you know, putting yourself out there, it's your journey to becoming Miss North Carolina. So you started competing in 2019. You know, you said kind of the journey started a little bit before that. You were thinking about it for a while. So what made you want to get into that competition in your freshman year of college?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it was needing extra scholarship dollars and the scholarship dollars Miss America provides. I mean, the great thing about competing in North Carolina too is that we have what we call benefactor scholarships, which are outside of competition. They're essay-based scholarships that anyone competing is able to write an essay and apply for. And we give $80,000 almost. I know one year it was $100,000 in just those scholarships that have nothing to do with what you do on stage. And so, you know,
nice.
Obviously there are great scholarships available for when we're competing, but even when it's before we even compete, you know, sitting at home writing those essays and turning them in, girls are winning life-changing amount of scholarship dollars with the Miss America organization. And so that was the big thing for me is I knew I didn't want a ton of student loans. I watched my parents pay off their student loans into their 50s, and that's not what I wanted to do. And so that was kind of the first thing. But a lot of the girls say, you know, I came for the scholarships and I stayed for the service. And we really get the opportunity as title holders to serve our local communities and the state in a way that matters to us with our social impact initiative, with our sister queens doing projects, all of those things. And so just the ability to do that and also to gain so many life skills that you don't necessarily gain in your 20s unless you are kind of forced to in this way. So the interview
For
skills,
sure.
I mean, our competition is one big interview, but the most important part of our competition is our private interview because that's the only time that our panelists see us for more than a minute at a time. And we actually get to speak to them and tell them about ourselves. You know, we have to turn in our resume and we have to brand ourselves on social media. These things that young people don't always get the opportunity to do, we're kind of being forced to do. I think another really great thing about it is that when you're in your 20s, when you're in college, it's a time that, especially now in a digital age, that a lot of people can put things online and do things that could get them into trouble down the line. Well, when you know you're competing and you want to be Miss North Carolina, you're like, I cannot afford to do things that are going to reflect poorly on the job that I want, which was to be Miss North Carolina. And so just so many things about the opportunities that you get, even the small things, learning how to do your hair and makeup and presenting yourself and wearing things that look best on you. You know, those are things that you have to do for the rest of your life to be able to present yourself professionally. And this organization really allows young women to explore all of those things in a way that's going to benefit them for the rest of their lives.
Was it overwhelming at first? I mean, like the dresses and the makeup and the hair, like all that, like just stresses me out, like trying to figure out how to even make that work. So, I mean, were you overwhelmed initially or you're like, you just needed one dress? Was it simpler to?
Well, again, kind of just going off of who my dad was and who, you know, we are in the Martin house. The way we do things is that if we're it's a little like touch of crazy, I think. The way we do things is that if we're going to do them, it's all the way. So, you know, my dad being like, Olympics, we're going, it's happening.
Right.
Or like when I started competing, from the moment I decided I was going to compete, my goal was to be Miss America. Just done. You know, until they crowned someone else on December 15th, I was like, it's me. You know, they might call a secret top 11 finalists and they're calling me out there and I got to go. So it's just kind of the way that I guess I was raised to where if we're going to do something, we're going for it 100%. And so before I stepped foot on my local stage, and I think, you know, I won the title of Miss North Carolina really quickly. I only competed twice. That's not something that happens a lot. And I was
That's amazing.
my first year. that definitely doesn't happen a lot for a lot of girls. But before I did my first local competition, I worked with a coach and prepared for a year. So when I stepped
Okay.
foot on the stage for the first time, I was really well prepared for it to be my very first time competing. And so I kind of had a year to figure out all of the things I need. For my first competition, I wore an old prom dress for my talent. I found a gown on Poshmark for $80. Beautiful gown that I
Nice.
still own and I've worn still. It's a beautiful Tony Bowles, which is like a older school. He's not as prevalent now, but a great gown designer. Beautiful gown that a lot of my Miss America gown has a lot of inspiration from that very first gown too. So I spent $80 on it. I wore a dress that I already had for my interview. And I think that's kind of a misconception about competing, is that you have to spend a ton of money to do well. You definitely can.
Yeah.
And, I won't say that, I haven't had the opportunity to get custom gowns that are incredible. But you don't have to do that. You can kind of compete in a way that financially makes sense for you. And so it was a lot to be doing something that I hadn't done before, but at the same time, I spent a lot of time preparing for that very first competition. And so it didn't end up being too overwhelming because I just spent the time to prepare and get ready to do it.
That's incredible, one, that you did reach that level so fast, because I'm
Yeah.
sure you met people that had been competing for years and it just hadn't happened for them.
We have a few Miss North Carolinas that competed 5 times before they won the title of Miss North Carolina. And I tell young people all the time that are talking about competing is that I really don't think it's the amount of time as much as the amount of effort that you're willing to put in. And so if you can put in 5 years of work in 2 years, I mean, you can do it and you can be done. And there's a bit of luck when it comes to competitions like this. It's a bit of, are these 5 people going to think I'm cool? And if they don't, it's not going to be you. And I went to Miss America in December. I felt like everything I did was as close to perfect as I could have done it. And I didn't make the top 10. And it was just that the 5 people that were our panelists just didn't think Karolyn Martin was a cool person. And like, that's fine. They just didn't gel with who I was and what I wanted to do as Miss America. And that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles, and that's how life is. But just making sure that I was prepared to my fullest going into Miss America and in that first competition is what kind of made it easier to tackle.
Well, it is a bit like winning the lottery too. Like
Especially
you've
winning
got
Miss
these.
America.
You're competing against 50 or 50 or more.
51 of me's. Imagine that. Just copy and paste me 51 times. I mean, I don't even know how the people in that hotel were sane for the week with the energy we brought.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. I know. And I saw some of your stories too that you posted on the bus and you all did service activities and things. And that's a lot of big energy too. Good big energy coming at you.
51 extroverts that just love to be on stage and talk. And definitely a lot. I took a lot of naps because it's just a lot of energy happening in the building. And we were at the Mohegan Sun, wonderful resort and sponsor of our organization. And in the expo center where we performed and had our backstage area, it's just concrete floor. It's not carpet. It's nothing comfortable. I brought a pillow from my hotel room and a blanket, and I had an eye mask. I took an hour nap after lunch on that concrete floor every single day. I missed the concrete floor. It was very comforting.
Good for you. That's part of your self-care, right? Taking care of yourself. Yeah. Getting rest. I mean, that's so important. And I guess that's one of my questions too, is just how do you deal with the continuing on after the highs and the lows, right? So highs of winning, and then, there's going to be losses. Your first competition, you get second runner up, which is huge, but you don't hit your goal, which is to win. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I'd say, being second runner up, I'm the type of person where it's I'm in it to win it. And so for a lot of people in their first year, that would have been the win, to be second runner up. And it was a win of sorts. I was second runner up to Miss North Carolina my very first time. So I was happy, but at the same time, I was I feel like I could have won that. And I came back and won the next year. I didn't change too much. I probably could have. It just was not my time to win. And so sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially in a type of competition that is so subjective, and it's not like playing volleyball where the ball hits the floor and you get a point and that's the end of it.
Right.
It's a lot more just, what do these strangers like in the 11 minutes that they see you throughout the week? So it really is subjective. But I think part of it for me was just taking the time to be upset about it and to just be like, I wanted to win and I didn't, and that sucks. And I feel like I did my best and I didn't win like I wanted to. But then to say, okay, let's look at what I did. What do we not want to change? And then what might we need to make some adjustments to going forward, and then getting ready to do it again. And I competed again the next summer and won Miss North Carolina. And then it was kind of the same process of, okay, what do I want to change going into Miss America, to make sure that I feel like I give myself the best shot. And then losing Miss America, honestly, and it really sucked. I was really disappointed, especially not making the top 10 and not getting the opportunity to, try when it came time for finals night. It was really disappointing. And I really just had to be upset and sad about it. And I was so excited for every every young woman that made top 10 at Miss America. I was so excited for Grace Stinky, who I think is already becoming an incredible Miss America and is going to do great this year. I'm going to her homecoming here in a few weeks. I was so excited for her, but I had to have this understanding of like, I'm happy for them. And I'm also very sad for me, because I knew that I had everything it took to be in the top 10 and to be an incredible Miss America too. And it sucked not to get the opportunity to do that. I really felt like I would have been an incredible Miss America. And that's something that I really could have made a large impact with. And I had to come to terms with the fact that it just was not what was for me in this time. And that's okay. You kind of just have to be sad about it and let yourself feel how it feels and move on. And honestly, I think there's always going to be a little bit of disappointment in the fact that when it came time to come to finals night, they didn't call my name. That was not fun. It was a really disappointing point in my journey for me. And I think understanding that it's okay if there's always a little bit of disappointment in that fact, but also that I did everything that I could and I have no regrets in how I competed. And it's just kind of how the story went, but also that I get to continue being Miss North Carolina for the next 6 months, and that part of the journey and story doesn't have to end. And whenever I go to a local competition or when I come back to Miss North Carolina in the future, I'm always going to be Miss North Carolina. And there are some people, the thing that really excites me is that, they're going to ask someone in their interview one day, who's your favorite Miss North Carolina? And so I'm going to be someone's favorite Miss North Carolina. That's incredible that you get to have that impact, even if it's not what you thought it was going to be, which for me, it was to be Miss America. You still get to have that impact and impact people's lives and journeys and stories, even if it's in a different way.
That was beautifully said. And I know that there is a lot of disappointment. I can relate a bit to this because I did Toastmasters for a while, or I'm still in Toastmasters, but they have a world championship of public speaking contest. It's kind of the Miss America to the Toastmasters world, right? Like
Miss Toastmasters.
Right. You compete and you move up, and then you eventually get to like 10 finalists where there are judges and they have a criteria, that they're judging from. But essentially you have to win over, the most amount of judges in order to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. Now, I have never made it that far to like that big stage of 10 finalists. I have not even made it to the district level, which is like the level before that. But I always thought, like, when I was starting my public speaking journey, I always thought I had to win. Like, I had to be the world champion of public speaking in order to start my public speaking business. In order to be considered a good public speaker, I had to win this title. And what I've realized over the years is I don't need that title to be a good speaker. I don't need that title to be someone who brings impact to others and speaks in front of others. And so while I know that the title of Miss America would be amazing and you would have done a fantastic job, you also don't need that title to go on to do bigger and better things,
Absolutely.
which you already have planned for. And I know you will do bigger things. So
thank you.
Certainly, have the disappointment and it'll happen, but I know that this will not set you back either.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we also have our teen program. So Miss America's teen, and I have Miss North Carolina's outstanding teen. Miss North Carolina's teen, shout out to Kerrigan, love her. And so whenever we're at local competitions, a lot of time they'll pull us on stage to interview us. And a question that we get a lot is, what is your advice to the girls that are competing tonight or the ones that are going to be competing for your job in June? And her advice is always to have a goal outside of winning. Now, that is the opposite of what my advice is. I'm like, my goal, I'm competing, I am here to win. That's it.
Mhm.
and that's just who I am from a world of being a competitor. But at the same time, I go into competition pretty focused and singular minded. And I think for me, again, that just comes from being an athlete. And you don't go to a volleyball game with a goal that's not to win the game. I mean,
There are no
I'm
moral
not like,
victories.
yeah, I'm not like, my goal in this game is to make friends with the outside hitter that's right across from me. I would really like to be her friend. Not really my goal. Right.
Right. Right.
But I think at the same time, there's merit to like, yes, the goal is to win, but also realizing the other things that you get out of it, whether you win or not, the friendships that you gain, the skills that you get from competing, even though the goal is to win, still in my book, there are other things that you gain along the way. And so that's where I concede to her point a little bit is, I think my way of saying what her point is like, hey, you don't want the only thing you're thinking about is winning. I'm thinking about winning the whole time. My eyes on the prize. But,
Yeah.
Also realizing that you get all of these other incredible things along the way that you get if you win, but you also get if you don't win. And that's the really wonderful thing about competing too. And I think honestly, looking back on playing volleyball, I gained so many things, even on the Spring Valley volleyball team where we had a season where we lost every single game. There's so many things that I learned from that season, from us losing a lot too, but just from the fact of being a competitor and having the determination and having the drive and all of those things that you get no matter what the outcome is.
I'm sure that was an especially hard season for you to not win many games.
Like not one. There was a lot of running involved. It wasn't necessarily the best few months of my life for sure.
Yeah. But lessons learned.
I'm also the kind of person that it's like, okay, once the loss happens, let's move on to what is the next thing that we need to focus on. And it's like, we do have a game in 3 days that it's like, I don't think we need to be sad about that for too long when we could be trying to win the next one. So there's a balance of be upset that you lost, yes, but also, all right, what's the next thing that we can do moving forward so that tomorrow is better?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I want to ask you a little bit about the Miss America competitions and how they're structured too. So I'm not very well versed in them. Is there still a talent portion of it? And then there's the interview. So then you said there's a private interview. Can you walk us through how your Miss America competition went?
Yes. Okay. So Miss America week, you can only compete at Miss America once. And so it's 51 state title holders, all 50 states and District of Columbia that have never been to Miss America before. And we're all just kind of showing up all right, here we go. Who knows? And so about 2 months before you turn in all of your paperwork, which is your resume, an essay about your social impact initiative, and then your headshot. You turn all those in. The judges have them in these big binders that they get mailed. They're reading about all the candidates over the few weeks that they have those, making notes about questions they want to ask, and they get a judge's charge, which the executive director of the organization gives. And it's basically this is what we're looking for in our Miss whoever. So our Miss America in this circumstance. We all get there. We have all these rehearsals. We're up all day long and we rehearse and eat and go to sleep. Basically, that's it. And then we get to our day that we have our private interview. So it's a 10-minute private interview with our panel of judges. It's 5 to 7, just depending on the competition, where they are able to ask us quite literally almost anything. So current events, stuff about our social impact initiative, what would you do in the job if this occurred, all of those things. That's 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And then we get a 30-second closing statement. We leave the room, they score us, we leave. And that is kind of the biggest part of the competition because if the judges like you in the interview, they're going to have a connection to you and what your story is. And so you really want to connect with them in the interview. So then we have our onstage competition. We usually do 2 nights of preliminary competition. So it'll be like group, I think it was Mu and Alpha. So for Miss America is what they did. So we had
nice.
the Mu group and we had the Alpha group. And we're just kind of split in half, 25 and 26. And one night a group will do talent and the other group will do their social impact pitch, their onstage interview, and their red carpet. So our social impact pitch is a 30-second kind of speech, TED Talk sort of thing, they describe it as, about what our service project is. So we have that. Then we have our red carpet competition where we're wearing our evening attire of choice. For a lot of girls, it's a gown, but it could be anything. And then you get asked a question like you're on the red carpet. So that's one of our phases of competition. And then we have our talent, which is just a 90-second talent, whatever you do for your talent. I sing. We've had girls do monologues, dancers, baton twirlers, speed painters. There was a science experiment. Camille Schreier, Miss America 2020, did a science experiment. The current Miss America is a violinist. And so all kinds of stuff. So after those 2 nights of preliminary competition, each of those phases, we go to finals night. They call the top 10. And then from there, the top 10 recompetes in everything. They call a top 5. They do another set of questions that are usually about the job. So, what would you do if this happened in the job? And from there, they rank all the candidates and then Miss America's called. So.
Okay. Wow. And the red carpet question, is that, can you give an example of like what kind of questions they ask there?
This is where you see like the fumbles online. Yeah. So because they could be anything, a lot of people think that we get like a list of what the questions could be. We don't get a list. We don't get like a list of potential topics. It could literally be anything. And until you're on the stage and they say the question to you, you don't know what it is because everyone's getting a different one. You have no clue what they're going to ask. And so I ask people to have a little more empathy for these girls when they see them
for sure.
stumble, because you're getting asked this random question with thousands of people in the room. You're being judged for this job that you really want, and millions of people are watching on TV. All of your family and friends are watching at home, and it's going to live in perpetuity. It's
especially with the internet now. Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot of pressure. And so, example, let me think. I got asked at Miss North Carolina this year, what does success in these United States mean to you?
Okay.
And my inner monologue was like, what does that even mean? What does that mean?
That's a doozy
honestly,
of a question.
Yes. So how they did it at Miss North Carolina was the judge that asked you your first question in your private interview would be the judge that asked you your on-stage interview question.
Oh, okay.
So I knew who it was going to be. And for context, this was a brigadier general. And she was asking people, I was in the group that did it the second night. She was asking people some hard hitters. I mean, like crazy stuff. And I don't mind a hard question. My brain I hear the question and I don't know, my brain just works and we go. So I was expecting something really hard. And the question wasn't hard, but I was just like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean what does success in these United States mean to you? And so I'm standing there and I was like, all right. And Miss America 2000 was our MC. So Heather French Henry, Miss America 2000 is holding the mic. And I took a deep breath and I was like, as a military child, I was like, I'm going to get her. I'm going to get her here. I said, as a military child, I have had the opportunity to live all across the country and see some of the most incredible and successful people in our country. And for me, as Miss North Carolina, one way that I would want to be successful is by becoming the second Miss North Carolina to become Miss America. And I was like, I think we're ready for that. And I think I'm the person to do it. And I walk off stage the wrong way.
Oh, well, you had a lot to do. Yeah.
I walk off stage the wrong way. And then I get up there and I think to myself, did I just say that I'm going to win Miss America while Miss America was holding the microphone? Is that what I just did today? All right. Perfect. Great. But, girls get asked, one of my best friends was asked last year if she thinks women should be drafted into the military. And
That's
if they should
hard.
have
And
to
you have
sign up for
90
the draft.
seconds? 90
No,
seconds
you
to
have
answer.
20 seconds to answer. 90
20
seconds is for
seconds.
talent. You get 20 seconds. Yes.
That's not
I
enough
mean,
time.
no, not enough time at all to be asked questions that they ask in presidential debates that no one can really cover what the answer would be in like a whole 2-hour debate. They're asking us
Right.
crazy things like, what should America do about the war in Ukraine?
Wow. Yeah, 20 seconds.
I really am not sure, but I'm going to give you an answer. It could be anything. Sometimes things as simple as like, if you were usually not on stage, but in your private interview, if you were like a fruit, what fruit would you be? And then I'm standing there like, you mean I've spent the last 3 months of my life studying every current event for you to ask me what fruit I would be? Can we move on, please? I'm begging.
A pineapple spiky, and I
exactly.
when you
What should the governor have done about COVID-19 in your state? I don't know. Like, who really knows?
Seconds.
Yes.
I mean,
20
so what are they
seconds is what you
looking
get for your onstage
for?
question.
And I don't. What are they looking for? They're just judging you, like how you respond, your poise
How you respond.
when you're asked
Yes.
a hard question.
The thing about being a title holder, especially a state title holder, is that you get interviewed live all the time. Just you'll be at an event and you'll have someone will be like, "Hey, I'm doing a radio show. Do you want to come do a quick interview?" Or we're filming something for TV here. Do you want to come do this ABC 11 interview? All the time. Or you're asked to speak in public about something random all the time. And so they want to know that when you are being Miss North Carolina and someone asks you some crazy question, you are not going to like take the organization down with you in your answer. Or, you say something that's really not appropriate and now it's a big news story and it's a whole thing. And so I totally get it. And I love it because talking is my favorite hobby and I'm going to figure out something to say and it'll sound good enough and we'll move on. But it definitely is really important for title holders to be able to talk about and answer questions on a variety of topics because you just never know what someone is going to come up to you and ask you about, and it's live and everyone is watching right now and you just got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's really intense because I'm just going back to my Toastmasters experience. We do table topics, kind of similar. Like you get asked a question, you don't know what they're going to ask, but we have a minute, 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question. And they do little competitions too. Again, not on the grandest of scales like you have done, but there's competitions and it's 1 to 2 minutes and then you get an extra 30 seconds to wrap up. So, essentially 2.5 minutes to answer this impromptu question. So just hearing 20 seconds. Sorry, I'm like getting into the weeds of this just because I'm fascinated.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, please.
Does the time start when you're given the question or when you start speaking, that 20 seconds starts?
Speaking. So my advice to people is always like, take a second, take a deep breath, but don't think about it too much. Because when you start trying to like think about it too much and analyze it, for me, my mind will go blank. I just have to hear the question, take a deep breath and just start speaking. I usually don't like think and formulate the answer too much. I'll hear the question and I'll be like, okay, this is what they're asking. These are the things I want to say. This is where I want to get to. And like half a second, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. But the thing is that, you do so many mock interviews and practices that what your brand and the things are that you want to make sure the panelists know about you. And so going into our private interview, we can take as long as we want on any question. You don't want to take too long because you want to get a few questions. But I usually go in and I'm like, okay, here are the 5 things that they have to know about me. And so I know that in the questions they ask me, I have to get to those 5 topics somehow. And so, that, and then in your onstage question, I always like to try to relate it, if I can, back to being Miss North Carolina or being Miss America and what I'm going to do. But outside of that, it's just kind of like, all right, we'll figure it out when they ask, because you never know. And I think something a lot of girls get trapped into is they'll be backstage and they'll hear the questions that the girls before them are getting asked and they'll try to practice it. And I'm always like, well, that's not going to be my question. So what good is it doing me? I'm just going to see what they ask me and we're going to go from there.
That's so true. Yeah. So what is your pre-performance routine? Because I know for me, like if I'm doing an improv show or something, very low stakes compared to your competition
No,
stakes.
no.
But I got some adrenaline. I'm kind of
Yeah.
like antsy. Like I got to move. I got to bounce a little bit. Maybe I'm jumping up and down. Or if it's a speech, I might actually need to calm myself because I'll want to do that, but I'll like
Right.
I got to take a deep breath. We did a little breathing routine before this, like similar to that. What's your pre-performance routine look like?
Yes. Okay. So pre-performance starts when we start doing hair and makeup. So I like to give myself a lot of time for hair and makeup because it's kind of just like the time to like, I can put my headphones in and not talk to anyone and no one's going to be upset about it. So I could do it probably in half the time, but I'm like, I'm going to take 2 hours and we're going to get going. So we'll play like some hype music while I'm getting ready. And then when it's like 15 minutes before show, I like to get like a chill gospel playlist going, something. I have a tendency to talk very fast. And so if I go into it fresh from like Beyonce, I'm hype, I'm going to talk too fast. I know this about myself. So I've got to chill out a little bit. And then we go on, we usually start with an opening dance number. So it's like you get to be on stage a little bit, feel out the energy of the crowd. This is good. And then backstage, I have a coach named Luciera. She was a model in New York. She's incredible. She does a lot of walking and she does some interview stuff too. And her advice is always to be backstage practicing and walking through exactly what you're going to do when you walk out on stage. And so we did at Miss America our onstage question after we did our walking pattern and our modeling in our evening wear. And so I was just kind of walking through what I was going to do. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do this pose. I'm going to turn. I'm going to look at this judge, this judge, this judge. I'm going to pose. I'm going to look at the audience. I'm going to do my turn. And then I'm going to head to the red carpet. And I was backstage for maybe 5 minutes and just did that over and over and over. And it really is less because I've practiced it for months. It's not because I need to know what to do. I know exactly what to do, but I don't listen to or watch anyone else compete. I don't. I don't sit backstage and watch the monitors. I don't do any of that because to me, then it's so easy in a competition like this to start comparing and being like, well, she does this and she does this. It's not like playing volleyball where it's helpful to know the outside hitter always, tries
you're
to
scouting
hit right down the line.
Yeah.
It's not helpful for me to know that this girl has a really killer talent. All that's going to do is stress me out. It's not helpful. So, I don't watch anyone compete. I'm someone that when competition is coming, we all have our title holder Instagrams. I had all of the girls. I love all 50 girls I competed with. They were all muted. I did not want to see them on my Instagram feed. I didn't want to start thinking about, well, this girl's going to have a really strong interview and this girl's going to have a really strong talent and this girl is going to have a really amazing gown. It's not something that I even wanted to be part of my thought process going into Miss America. I wanted to feel like there's no way that it isn't me as long as I go do everything that I need to do. Even if that doesn't end up being true, it's the level of confidence that you're able to carry on stage being like, I'm already Miss America. Who cares what anyone else does? I'm doing everything exactly how I need to do and doing it perfectly. And so that's really what I did backstage. Didn't listen to or watch a single other girl. My parents would be like, oh, did you see such and so's talent? And I'd be like, no, what do they do for talent? I don't even know. Like if they sing or dance, I have no idea. And they'd be like, she was 2 people before you. And I'd be like, I wasn't paying attention. I really
That's so good though.
Yeah.
You're in your zone.
It's not helpful. Exactly. And I think that's what you have to do because it can start to really get in your head of what other girls are doing. And I think we had a really wonderful Miss America class. No one was trying to, I think that's a misconception that everyone's trying to kind of mess with each other. There wasn't really any of that, but I'm sure there are some girls that is what they do to make themselves feel more confident is do things to kind of get into other people's head. And, I didn't experience that. I think a lot of girls in our organization and in similar competitions are really amazing. But in anything that you're doing, there are people that, they don't feel great about themselves. So they're trying to tear other people down. And I think the best way in whatever you're doing to avoid that is to just kind of do your thing and not worry about what other people are doing. And so I go into competition, whether it was a local competition or Miss America, just really focused on me. And I think when you're competing in this kind of way where it's really singular and it's just you against you, that's the best way to do it. Because if you're focused on what everyone else is doing, you're going to tear yourself apart before you even get there.
It's so true. Yeah. I can relate that to the public speaking competitions,
Yeah.
Toastmasters and stuff. They actually put in a rule in like recent years to say you can't reference other people's speeches because it used to
Mm,
be a thing where you could. So there was always like the option of like if you listened and you wanted to be like, oh, and like so and so said and kind of relate it back, which always showed like an element of improvisation because you added it in last minute, but they actually did away with that. So you actually get disqualified if
mm,
you reference someone else's speech
interesting.
that's spoke before you. So I actually am really glad they did that because then you don't have to listen. Like you're saying, like you can be in your zone. You don't have to know what any of the other speakers are saying because you're not even supposed to reference it. So don't even listen. I think that was a very helpful rule for some people who
Yeah.
would get into their heads and start that comparison mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely easy to do that. It'll be like, oh, well, she has a more expensive gown than I do. The judges don't know how much the gown costs. It's not like being displayed on the screen behind you. Who
Right.
cares? And so it's just not helpful to go in feeling like you are lesser than anyone. And, not to be
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm the best person on the planet and I'm better than her. It's not about that. It's about knowing that you are the best you that you can be. And I think every single choice I made for Miss America was the choice that I felt was 100% the best for me. My mom and dad didn't like the headshot that I chose for Miss America. But I felt like they didn't. They didn't like it. They were like, I just don't like that one. I think you should choose this one. But I just felt like that was the best one. And it's the one that I wanted to send. So it's the one that I sent. There were some
Mm-hmm.
people that didn't like the song that I chose. We have this thing in competition world. You're really about to get the inside scoop now. Hold onto your hats, everyone.
Come on, yeah, bring it.
We have this thing called the void boards. Dun, dun, dun. Scary music. They're anonymous message boards, kind of like an anonymous Reddit, where people go on and they talk about the girls competing. They are not as
Oh.
nasty as they were years ago, but they're not that nice. And so one thing that after Miss North Carolina, people were saying during Miss North Carolina week about me. And I am very much like, I don't look at the void boards. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. But sometimes people will tell you about stuff that's going on them. And after I won, someone was like, yeah, during the week, people were like, yeah, I thought Karolyn was going to win until I saw her song choice. And I didn't like her song choice. After I knew that, going into choosing my talent for Miss America, I was like, well, should I choose a different song? Like, was my song bad? This, that, and the third. I sang the exact same song for my talent at Miss America because I felt like it was the best choice for me. And even
what song did you
afterward,
sing? Can I ask?
I sang "This Is the Moment" from. You can't ask. Yeah, "This Is the Moment" from Jekyll and Hyde was what I sang, and so
nice.
I wanted my song to kind of have a meaning about my journey, and so I decided that it was the right choice for me. But it's so easy when you're doing something that feels like it's about what you look and how your hair looks and all of that stuff. When it's not about that at all, it's about your qualifications for the job, but it can feel like it's a lot about those really personal things. To hear things that people say and take them personally and change everything and do a whole 180 because of the things that people that are just random people on the internet. I have a theory that it's people that, their moms are upset about how their daughters performed and placed. My theory is that that's who it is. It's disgruntled mothers. Volleyball moms. This is like if volleyball moms
Volleyball
had
dads,
a private forum to discuss. And I think it's disgruntled mothers talking about people because it just is like, all right, what does that do for you to talk about you didn't like my song or you don't like my speaking voice or,
but they're
all
not the
crazy
judges.
things.
Yeah.
They're not the judges. And so you have to make the choices that are best for you. And for me, all of my wardrobe, we have wonderful sponsors. I mean, incredible sponsors in the Miss North Carolina organization. I had 2 custom gowns that I did not have to pay for that I took to Miss America.
Amazing.
From Mackenzie Jades and An Affair to Remember here in North Carolina. And I felt my best on the stage. And I think that really shows in your confidence and everything that you do.
I'm like, why even have those void boards? Like, Just,
I
is it
know.
more for connection so people can post and it's supposed to
No,
be a
it's just so
positive
they can
thing?
talk about us and be mean. It's not, it's never been positive. It's just so
Yeah,
people can, they try to say that it is like for the fans to talk about it and give constructive criticism. But to me, it's just a way for them to tear people down. And it's sad. But
it
what
is sad.
I always tell girls competing, like, one, don't look at them. Two, if you
No,
have people and friends that are always sending you things from them, those are not real friends. And three, like, if you
Mm,
see something on it, and this is just like life advice, if you see things that people are saying that are mean and aren't helpful, it's just kind of one of those things where you have to see it, and like, it probably is going to hurt your feelings. You have to be like, man, that sucked. I don't like that they said that about me. But then you just have to be like, you know what, it really isn't something that's serving me, and I'm going to move on. And it's sad that just in general we have a lot of people with internet just being so prevalent that like to talk poorly about other people online, and when they can hide behind a screen, it's really easy for them to do. But it's just kind of part of life now. And especially being a state title holder, you are a public figure. It's something that just comes with the territory that isn't necessarily fun, but it's just something you have to kind of learn and grow from and move on. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that isn't as glamorous about the job, but it's all right.
it sounds like you've developed a very thick skin in it, which you have to have, and just, yeah, trusting your gut. Like, you're
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
competitor. This is your competition. Certainly you have help, you have coaching, you have input from people you trust, but at the end of the day, you are making the decision for how you are going to compete and what works best
Absolutely.
for you. And that's
That's the
important
most
that you
important
trusted
thing. Yeah.
yourself.
My dad always would say that I was the captain of the ship. And so, no
Mhm.
matter the people on our board or the people on the voy boards or coaches that I had, but they thought that I should do, I had to make the final call on what I wanted to do. And that allowed me to walk away from Miss America. I did not take one trophy, award, anything away, except for the $3,000 scholarship I got just from showing up and
Ooh,
existing in the space,
yeah.
which was like so great, right? I did
Yeah.
not walk away with a single thing, but I knew that every choice that I made was the choice that I wanted to make, and that everything I did on the stage was as close to my level of perfect as it could have been. And after that, like, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just like, what
Mhm.
did the 5 strangers think of me this week? They didn't vibe with me, and that's unfortunate, but that's okay. Other people will.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Carolyn, I want to take a super quick break, the quickest of breaks, and I want to ask you a little bit about your public speaking experience because you're such
Yeah.
an excellent speaker, interviewer, of course, we can tell here, but I want to kind of learn a bit about your journey with that. So, real quick, we'll be right back. All right, and we're back after the quickest of breaks. And Carolyn, I can just see and hear just from speaking with you. I mean, you're a great presenter, speaker, interviewer. But my question for you is, did you always love talking? Well, I know you said when you're younger you didn't, but like as you're getting into the competitions, did you always
Right.
love the speaking, the interview component, or did you have to learn to love it?
So interview, since I've been competing, it's always been my favorite phase of competition. I love private
Nice.
interview. Backtracking back a little bit, I was not always great at public speaking. And I remember, and my dad forgot about this story. I had to remind him about it. This is very true. Again, shout out to my dad, who definitely listens. He watches like every single post I make on social media.
Oh,
He's very
that's
much
so
watching all
sweet.
of it all the time. So he's probably listening. Shout out that. um, my dad he wanted me to be a doctor growing up, very, very much so. I don't do math
Mhm.
or science well, so it was never going to work out that way. But, hopefully lawyer, second best, he'll be okay with
Mhm.
that. But a Juris Doctorate, technically, come
Yeah.
on, Dad.
Uh-huh. It counts. We'll
But
count it.
anyways,
We'll count it.
thank you, I appreciate it. He sent me to this pharmacy camp at University of South Carolina about
Oh,
like
wow.
learning about being a pharmacist and like whatever. Okay. Snooze fest. At the end of the week,
Yeah, for sure.
at the end of the week, we had to do these presentations about something in pharmacy, like some topic that they gave us. I don't know what mine was. It doesn't matter. And my mom and dad come to the presentation. I give mine, and I guess when I was presenting, I was saying a lot. like,
Yeah,
oh,
it
we had
happens.
this,
It
we're doing
happens.
compounding, and I was saying a lot. He was so mad. We got home. He's telling me about this the whole ride home in the car. You were saying the whole time. It like, Karolyn, you could not do that when you present. This is making my dad sound awful. Also, I would just like to say I have a wonderful father. I love him. I have a great relationship with him. These are just the funny stories about my dad.
For sure. He's just I get it.
He's you know him. He's a great guy.
Yes.
He can be interesting. He can be a lot. He makes me practice the presentation at home. I'm never going to give this presentation again. He's just not happy about the ums of it all. No, I was not always a great public speaker. But again, I just come from a family where, like, when we're doing things, we do have to do them correctly. And if we don't do them correctly, we're going to work on it until it's correct. And I had to go home and practice this presentation that I was never going to look at again after I left this camp. I was never going to school. This information was never going to be relevant to my life. But it was the principle of, we need you to speak better than this in public. This presenting level that you're at is not going to work. And so, it was not a natural skill of mine, but it's kind of one of those things where I look back on like that and the waking up and training for volleyball, all these like tiny things that happened in my life and how they work now for what I do and how much they've helped me and prepared me to be Miss North Carolina, where it's like, wow, I feel like it was just meant to be because all of these things definitely prepared me for this. And I love my dad so much. He's hilarious. He's quite the character, especially with just some of these stories that I remember from growing up. But yeah, I mean, there's another story, not public speaking related, but just a funny story about my dad, where his mother, my grandmother, said to him one day when I was like 5 years old, she's going to be Miss America one day. What? And my dad was like, you're ridiculous. We're never doing that. Ever.
Wow.
And here we are. So it's kind of like, wow, everything. It's crazy how, you look back on those moments in your life and you didn't know how they were preparing you for what would come later that you didn't even know you were going to do.
I have goosebumps. That's crazy that your grandma.
It would have been crazier if I'd won Miss America. Then it would be really wild. But it's all right.
Hey,
it's all right.
You made it. You made
we
it
were on the stage. We
the closest. Yeah, for sure. And it is crazy too that you can only compete once. So like how much pressure is that you only get this one chance? I mean, it really is winning the lottery. I mean, you're competing against 51 people. I mean,
51. And before that, I mean, 10,000 girls compete in locals across the country every year.
Yeah,
so we're going to have 45 girls at Miss North Carolina this year, close to the amount that you compete with at Miss America. And you can compete at the state level until you age out. 28 is the age limit now.
Right.
28. But still, like, to be one of 51 people that make it to Miss America for 101st anniversary of Miss America this year is still quite the feat, for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Grandma was super close.
She was super close. Honestly, she wasn't too far off. She was close to getting it, for sure.
That's yeah. And so in your training with your coach, you said when you first started to compete, you really worked for like a year, hard for a year with a coach. Was that a big part of it? The interview portion, or I mean, I guess you spent equal time on the talent, or you're like, I'm good with interview. Let's focus on the talent. How did you
it was a bit
train
of
that?
Everything. Yeah, a bit of everything. For me, again, just looking at it from the point of being a competitor, I was like, I'm getting all the points that we can get. And so really winning is like, you just want to get as many points as you can. So my thing is always like, even though red carpet is only 10% of my score, that's 10% of my points that I can get, So for me, it was making sure that I felt like I was at a 10-point level for every single phase of competition. And even if we never get our score. So I don't know if I've ever gotten a 10 in anything. I have no idea. But just knowing that my talent, my evening wear and modeling, my interview, my onstage interview, all of it was as close to perfect as I could be on any given day was the most important thing to me.
Well, and tell me about your social initiative. So your social initiative is called Self-Care. What is that about, and how are you motivating people to do that?
So everyone in the Miss America organization has a social impact initiative. And it's kind of our service project that we talk about throughout our year of service as a title holder on the state, local, or national level. We all have one. And it's a requirement for competition. And so I think that's a really special part of our organization is that we're required to have this service project that we focus on. And so, like you said, mine's called hashtag self-care, eat to success. And it's all about teaching people how to eat in a way that fuels our bodies, but in a way that doesn't focus on weight and appearance. And so for me, as a young girl, I really struggled with my body image. And it was playing volleyball that taught me that food allows our bodies to function and be at its best. The first travel volleyball team I played at was at Triangle Volleyball Club. And 11 years old, we had this nutrition seminar that all the teams from 12U to 18 had to go to. It was this full day thing. So like a very large age group of kids sitting as they're telling us about it. But it's, what taught me that what we eat really matters, but not in the way that media tries to tell us that it matters. It's not just about looking a certain way. It's about being able to function and perform at our best. And so that is what my social impact initiative is about. I published a cookbook for college students, which is meals that they can make in their dorms, healthy meals. I've, like you said in the intro, I hosted some wellness summits that were held to kind of help people have a better understanding of wellness. And so for me, that's what my years as a title holder have been focused on promoting is kind of that story and that journey that I've had.
That's amazing. I'm going to go a little deep here, but I've had to work on this. I had a lot of body image issues as well. And it really started to affect me in college. It would affect how I was eating. I didn't have an eating disorder, but I had disordered eating, which was like a red flag. I was looking at food as good or bad. And if I was hungry and there were only quote unquote bad foods, like friends had pizza and that was it, that was my only choice of food to eat, I wouldn't eat because pizza was labeled as bad and it wasn't good for me. And so there's a lot of red flags in my eating, and the dietitian at the college referred me to a therapist to talk things out. And I actually worked on these issues, but some of it, there's a lot of issues, but some of it stemmed from playing volleyball and wearing the spandex shorts, the short shorts, and like comparing my body to other girls' bodies, and their bodies looked better in the spandex and mine didn't. And I know girls today when they have the option to wear leggings, full length leggings. And oh my God, if I had that when I was playing, I'm sure I would still have issues, but like I would have chosen that all the time. And that could have really helped to have. So anyway, I say that to relate to those body image issues there.
Also, and no like skin to court contact. I mean,
for sure. It's not, it's like really not that helpful.
It's not, at least my leggings on, I can glide on the floor a bit better. Yes. Actually, these girls are living in luxury. What's up with that?
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I love the focus too on wellness. And in my full-time job, I'm a wellness consultant. I help companies with their employee wellness programs. Yeah. So I just love that you are speaking to people about nutrition. What are some of the healthy changes you're encouraging people to make?
Yeah, kind of talking about what you were talking about, one thing that I tell young girls a lot specifically is not labeling the foods that we eat as good or bad. It's really not helpful because all food is just food. And I think if we're able to see it that way and think about, okay, well, there are some foods that are fun and there are some foods that fuel our bodies better. And just knowing what the circumstances and what's appropriate or what we are wanting at that moment is really important. And so I talk about a lot of language change and mindset shifts because I think when we're able to do that, it's a lot easier than focusing first on eating something different and wanting to restrict certain things. I don't think that's as helpful as reframing the way that we think about food in general.
Yeah, and I love that your volleyball club did a whole eating seminar because as a coach, I would have to give nutrition rules, and sometimes I would get pushback. Yeah, for the food tables. And I would get pushback. Like, my rules were like, you have to eat breakfast the day of our tournament. Like, eat before we start playing. No Dippin' Dots ice cream, because a lot of times we're in the convention centers. They were, simple rules, but sometimes I would get no fried foods on the day that we're playing, like during competition. And
Yeah.
and sometimes you're playing at these convention centers, and if you don't prep ahead of time, all you have are the concession stands that have fries and hot dogs, and it's
Yeah.
like you need to prep. And so anyway, I know some parents always were like, you're being too hard on these 14-year-olds. It's like, no, I'm trying to help them compete at their best.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I could probably count on one hand the times at a tournament that my parents got me food from the concessions. They always planned, even when we weren't doing food tables, which like I miss volleyball food table days.
I know.
Snacks.
Those are the best.
Oh my God. So good. So good. All the snacks all the time.
Shout out to
even
the
when we didn't have
parents. Those are hard work.
Shout out to the parents with the food tables. I mean,
Yes.
the sign up lists, they were really working hard, like making sure we had the go-go squeeze on the ready. I mean, come on.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, my parents always planned for me to have food. A lot of the times you're getting up at 3 a.m. to drive there if you're not staying in a hotel the night before. And so my mom would have like boiled eggs and a protein shake and some grapes ready for me when I got up, or like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for me for lunch. I mean, always had food options just ready for me that allowed me to be my best, and weren't about, you need to look this way to play volleyball.
Right.
We're about like making sure that I felt my best and was able to perform at my best. And so I'm grateful for sure for them for that, for making sure that that was a part of my journey as an athlete, because it really is important, especially, when you have a dad like mine that's making you get up at 5 a.m. to lift in the garage. You definitely need to be eating enough food to get through that.
100%. Yeah, it's so important. And Karolyn, I'm going to switch gears a bit, but this podcast is focusing on improvisation and how improv kind of shows up all around us. Do you have any stories that you're willing to share where you had to improvise, maybe on stage or maybe in a competition of some sort? Maybe it was behind the scenes. And maybe you don't call it improvisation. Maybe you call it like, I had to wing it, or I had to be flexible. Any stories that come to mind?
Yeah. There is a Miss North Carolina phrase that Susan Williams is the executive director of our organization, and then Miss North Carolina Victoria Huggins always say, and they always say, Miss North Carolina must be flexible, because you just never know what is going to happen. I get to MC or help out at local competitions a lot. So at the Miss America organization, you compete on the local level to qualify to go to Miss North Carolina, which qualifies you to go to Miss America. And so I was at Miss Moore County, which was my very first local title this year. I came back as Miss North Carolina, and I was emceeing the competition. And sometimes you get some lulls in the competition. The auditors aren't ready to move on. The judges aren't ready scoring a phase of competition. Some music isn't working. And so you're standing there just kind of like, what do we do now? We have 5 minutes to fill. And I was at Miss Moore County. I was standing there for maybe 10 minutes. I had gone through all the talking points I had about, this is an incredible organization. Here are some of my stories through my year. I had nothing left. And I said, well, you guys, I said, y'all want to hear a joke? And so my co-MC, who was a husband of someone on the committee, he came out, he told a joke. We were like, no, that joke didn't quite land. I said, okay, I've got one. I've got one joke and one joke only. And I'll give it to you now, and we'll see if you can craft it.
Okay.
What happens when you show a chicken some lettuce?
It balks at it.
You get a chicken sees her salad. Chicken sees her salad.
Nice.
Ah, yeah.
Like
funny,
it.
Very yes.
Very
I also
nutrition
told this joke last.
too.
Thank you. It's very on brand. I also told this joke last weekend at a local competition when there was a stall, and I started it off with, you guys, I think I'm actually changing my talent to stand-up comedy. Here's my joke. Then no one really laughed, and I said, I didn't say it was going to score well. I was changing my talent. And so then that got laughed because no one laughed at my joke, which I think it's a very funny joke, and people.
I think it's a good joke.
Thank you.
It's a
I
good
agree.
one in your back pocket to have for sure.
Yes. And the Miss North Carolina's team, she actually came up with a joke list. And so we're ready. Next time we're at a local and there's a big stall, stand-up comedy central at the local competition. We're just going to go back and forth with these jokes. But, always, again, you'll get random times where you have to do an interview somewhere and you just kind of have to figure it out what you're going to say. Even on stage, if you get an on-stage question that you just don't really know what they're talking about, or an interview question, there's been times in mock interviews for me, especially, where I get asked something and I'm not an encyclopedia. I don't know everything, but you kind of just have to figure it out. And I don't have any shame in saying, hey, I've got no clue what you're talking about. But sometimes you can kind of get the vibe of what they're talking about and say, hey, I'm not really completely well versed on this topic, but this is kind of what I'm thinking based on what you said. And, being a title holder in the Miss America organization, there's definitely lots of times where you just kind of have to figure it out and just roll with it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, what was that question? What do you consider the success of America?
What does success in these United States mean to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what? What does that mean?
Total improv question, like, for sure. But certainly, like, you're improvising, but you know how to structure your answer so that it sounds well structured and you're not like, success, like, ending on like high notes, sounding confident too.
Absolutely.
Even while you improvise.
Yeah. And now as Miss North Carolina, I'm always like, well, I'm not competing. So if I make a fool of myself, they're not going to fire me. It is what it is. We'll just figure it out.
Well, and you have so much confidence too, right? And that ease on stage probably shows a lot too when you're doing your events.
Yeah, I love to be on stage. So it's always a good time. And it's like, you're definitely going to mess up sometimes and miss the mark, but it's just kind of like, here we are and we're just taking it one thing at a time and figuring it out. They always pull up Miss North Carolina and Miss North Carolina's team at the competitions to kind of ask us questions. And sometimes even then you don't know what they're going to ask you about. So you just kind of figure it out and hope it goes over well. And if it doesn't, there's always tomorrow, I guess.
Well, and I follow you on social media and I watch your stories. So do you prepare for those or do you kind of improvise those as you talk?
No, I'm usually a one-take wonder on those. I'm just kind of
I'm
like,
so impressed.
This is what's going on and this is what if I like started nitpicking and was like, I need it to sound like this, I would be there all day. So I just kind of hop on the story and whatever comes out of my mouth is what goes up, unless it's just a real fumble. But usually I'm like, it's a one-take wonder.
Yeah.
Whatever happens. Maybe that's not how I should do it, but that's how I do it.
No. I think it's, I'm trying to work on my social media game. I'm older than you. Yeah. I'm an older millennial and my social media game is very weak and I'm trying to work on it. And, part of that is doing like the selfie videos and I haven't done any as we are talking, but maybe by the time this episode comes out, I'll have done
just
some.
Don't fall victim to the millennial pause. That's the big thing on TikTok right now. People are
wait, tell me what is that?
Okay. So that is when you're filming like a video and you start and you don't start speaking right away. And then there's like a pause in the video because and I remember this a little bit because when I started getting on social media, it wasn't necessarily completely, all the kinks weren't worked out. So you would start it, but it wouldn't start as soon as you pressed it. It would glitch. And so that's where it comes from because millennials are used to social media kind of being a little less adept, but now when you press it, it starts. So there's a millennial pause where they'll start recording and they'll just be staring at the camera for like a second before before the millennials say anything. And so just don't fall victim to the millennial pause when you do your stories. Just when you press it, you can start talking, you're in the clear, you're good to go.
Well, you can edit that late, before
you can, but people don't do that.
Okay. No, this is helpful to know. If you start doing social media tips, I will sign up as well because I need all the help. But I see your stories and you're so comfortable too on your videos and you always look so comfortable on the stage, on the videos and pictures you show. So that's I'm glad you found your calling of just being on stage
Yes.
and making people happy too.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
2 questions left for you. This podcast focuses on creativity as well. And so, what other creative outlets do you enjoy outside of your job and outside of
Hmm.
being Miss North Carolina?
Well, I'll say, like, as far as kind of my journey to Miss America goes, I actually designed both of the gowns, my major gowns, my evening gown
Oh,
and my talent gown.
cool.
I designed both of them, which is not like my first inclination. I think it just came about because I had worn all of these gowns before I was starting to design my Miss America wardrobe. When you're Miss North Carolina, I mean, you get to wear all of these clothes that you take back to the store. You get to borrow a lot of stuff, which is really wonderful.
Oh,
And so in
okay.
the time I've competed, I've worn all of these different gowns. My Miss North Carolina gown that I won in was a custom gown, but I didn't really design it. I went to the designer, who was Jonathan Kane, for that one. And I tried on a bunch of different stuff at a trunk show. And we were talking about the elements of all the different things that we liked. And then he drew something. And I was like, oh, I love it. Check, move on. But I didn't design it. But my Miss America gown, I was kind of searching for what I wanted to do. And I saw a gown on Instagram that kind of caught my eye. And I was like, oh, I think this is kind of the vibe. So I took it and then I designed what I wanted. It was a really bad, like, mental drawing. It didn't look as great as the drawing Julie from Giovanni ended up creating. But I was like, okay, I want it to be a halter. I don't want a super low back. This is the stones I want. And she drew it. And I was like, that's exactly it. Make it. And then I actually made my own bad sketch of my talent gown based on a couple of gowns that I had worn. And again, took it to Julie at Giovanni. And they were able to make it through an Affair to Remember, my evening gown through Mackenzie Jades. So that was a creative outlet that I didn't know that I had figured out, but I designed both
Yeah.
of those gowns. I've gotten into reading. That's not
Nice.
like necessarily super creative, but
No,
yeah,
that's good. It helps you have an imagination.
yeah, I love to sing. That's really, I mean, those are the creative things that I do. I love musical theater. I want to, after my year's done and before I go to law school in the fall, I'd love to do a musical this summer. I haven't done that in a while. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do that. Who knows?
That's awesome. I am taking a musical improv class right
Really?
now.
How fun.
And I had my first one this weekend and it was really fun. And I'm not a singer.
Cool.
And the class
All
is a mix of singers and then a mix of beginners like me. And it's a lot of learning how to go with the music. The accompanist gives you a tune. And then, so what's
Right.
your tone of the song based on the tune? And then it's very simple. It's like an AABB or AABA structure. Doesn't have to rhyme. If you rhyme, bonus points, but like doesn't have to. It was so much fun. The class was so
That's
much
fun.
fun. So
That's
you
awesome.
should look at some musical improv classes
Yeah.
too.
That's cool.
Well, and how do you handle being a beginner? So I know you come from that sports background, that competition background. If I'm going to compete, it's going to be at my best. How do you handle being a beginner and not
Yeah.
being good at something right away?
Yeah, it was interesting for sure starting competing because I hadn't been a beginner at something in a while because I played volleyball for so long. I mean, I wasn't a beginner at playing volleyball for most of the time I was doing it. I had been doing it for so long. And I guess for me, the biggest thing that I see people miss is researching what you're doing. There are so many different pageant organizations, millions of them, for any different niche and group of people. And I think it's really important that you understand the competition that you're doing. For me, I knew that Miss America was really focused on interview, really focused on public speaking, focused on having girls that were really well-rounded and able to do a wide variety of different things, perform, able to speak, able to be beautiful, but also smart. All of these things were important. And if you don't research what you're doing when you're doing something new, I think you can really miss some things that you can figure out how to be good at it a lot faster if you have an understanding of the game that you're playing. Obviously competing, like I was saying earlier, it's a competition. And if you don't know what you're competing at, you're not going to be able to be good at it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And this podcast is kind of my chronicle of my improv journey. And I have so many improv books that I have purchased. Have I read them? No. But, hopefully I'm getting like shelfmosis a little bit
Yes,
and
yes.
it's kind of seeping through even though I haven't read
Exactly.
them yet. But yeah, I mean, that's a part of it. Like I get so excited. I'm like, I'm going to read all these improv books. But I certainly read online too. So that counts.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you're motivating me. I need to read a little bit more. Like you get to a certain level and then you can like level up the more that you
Right.
research and know too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good points. All right. Last question for you. And you are on an
Ready.
improv podcast, and improv is all about yes and. Yes and if I don't know if you've heard of yes and
Mhm.
before, but it's all about saying yes to the environment, the reality that we're creating on stage as scene partners, and then adding to it. And then that can translate into life, just saying yes to what you've been given and
Right.
how can you make it your own. You want to start a business, instead of saying no, I'm not ready, you say yes, and I can sell these goods, and I can promote this, and I can do that. Just saying yes and to yourself is really a growth mindset thing, which
Sure.
it sounds like you definitely have. How do you embody a yes and or growth mindset in your life?
Mm. Well, I mean, I would say that, we had to do we had to do these little interviews of our family for video packages at Miss America. And so I did one of my dad. Dad is just the topic
Nice.
of the day, hey dad.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was saying that one of the things, and I didn't know that he thought this about me, but it was very nice to hear that one of the things that he loves about me is that I'm always willing to try new things, even if I kind of have no clue what's going on. And so I think that's something that I really enjoy, is just figuring out new things and figuring out how to be good at them and continue to be my best, even if it's something that I haven't done. And so I think that's a really important thing, especially only being 22. I have so much life to live. I want to continue to try new things and have new experiences. And I think that's a way that I'm kind of able to embody that, is just finding new things to try and experience, even if I'm not good at them, even if they don't end up being my thing. You never know what is going to be your thing unless you try
I love that. And I've had to learn that more in my 30s. So I love that you are
it.
learning that in your 20s, because I look back and I think I was so focused on like getting through college and getting that good job, and then you get that job and you're like, okay, what now? And if you don't
Yeah.
have any outlets outside of that, it's kind of like, okay, what now? Kind of thing. So it's really
Yeah.
good to
Yeah.
have those other things.
Yeah, and it's been interesting coming back from Miss America. The past few years of my life, that has been my focus every day, outside of, doing
Right.
school and all the things. I've been
Right.
like, what am I going to do today so that I can be the best Miss America that I can be? And so it's been interesting coming back, trying, obviously, I'm preparing to go to law school. I'm doing all of these things, but it's what's going to be that thing that's being Miss America for me. But the exciting thing is that something else gets to be that big thing now, and that next new goal. And I don't know what it is yet, but I'll figure it out. And that's kind of the fun part of life, is that we get all of these different phases and opportunities to try new things and do something new.
Well, you have this stage and this platform now that, once the crown is passed on to someone else, new Miss North Carolina, you still, I know, but you still have time. But even when that crown does get passed on, you still have this platform that you can
Yeah.
certainly promote and teach people and motivate and inspire people in different ways. So, I just say keep going and keep inspiring, because you've got some amazing stories to share and you're helping people too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, and I know our listeners are listening and so enthralled. You said you're 22, and I'm just like, God, you're wise beyond your years, and that's amazing. And I'm sure people want to keep following you as you continue on in your journey. So, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Yes. Everything is Karolyn D as in Denise for my middle name, Karolyn D. Martin, Karolyn with a K. So Karolyn D. Martin on Instagram, TikTok. I'm almost at 10,000 followers on TikTok. I'm feeling very
Woo!
famous. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. My goal was to reach 10,000 by the end of the month. As we're recording this, it's the last day of January, and I have like
Yes.
260 people to go. So I don't know if it's going to happen by the end of the day, but maybe like mid-February. I'm very excited about it. I feel
Yeah.
like the K by the number is like, that means you're famous. So
Yes. Keep
Yes, I'm very
going.
excited about that. I really don't post a ton on my personal Instagram, but TikTok is where I'm just like sharing all the things all the time. But if you're interested in Miss North Carolina stuff, my Miss North Carolina is all Miss America NC for North Carolina. So you can definitely see what's going on with my year as Miss North Carolina there too. But the behind the scenes aspect of it all, that's where the TikTok comes in.
I love it. And I'm still learning TikTok a bit. Older millennial here,
Okay, that's all
learning the
right.
TikTok stuff. Yeah. But I do love your stories that you share
Thank
and
you. Thank
kind of
you.
behind the scenes from
Yeah.
the competitions. I do love those.
Everyone thinks it's a very glamorous job, and then it's like me carrying 5 million gowns, which is great, but very heavy, like to my car, like driving.
Uh-huh.
I drove 6 hours the
Suitcases.
other day.
Yeah.
Suitcases, yes, yes, all of the things all the time for sure.
Yes, and your book, The Self-Care Kitchen, is on
Yes,
Amazon as well for
yes,
all those
ma'am.
college students, who need dorm meals, which I was thinking, God, I think I ate a lot of peanut butter sandwiches in my dorm because we didn't have a kitchen. And of course, we
Right.
had like the all-you-can-eat
Yeah.
dining hall downstairs, which didn't have a lot of healthy options either.
Sure.
So I'm sure you have some good recipes in there, which
Yes,
is
for sure,
great.
for sure.
Carolyn, thank you so much for being
Thank
on today,
you.
sharing your story. It was so nice to connect. I always say, this is my joke that I say, is it's a good thing that the girls are getting older, but I'm not. So I see a lot of the girls that I used to coach, they're now in college.
Yeah, Kennedy is in college now. Isn't that wild?
I think the last of the girls that I've coached now are in college. Like I don't have any that are
I
still
can't
in high
believe it.
school that I know of. And it makes me sad a little bit because I'm like, oh, they're getting older, but good thing I'm not. I'm not getting older,
Yes.
just they are.
Yeah. No, really. I truly, my sister's like still 12 to me. So I don't know how she's in college. I don't know why they let a 12-year-old in. That's weird.
Right. But it's so cool to see how you've grown up and become this beautiful woman inside and out, and you're on your journey, you're on your path. Keep going, keep sharing. I'm so happy for you. I know your
Thank
parents
you.
have to be so proud of you just in
Most
everything.
days. Most days.
Most days, I'm sure. Yeah, but it's like I'm tearing up a little bit just because it's so like seeing like where we were like 5 or 6 years ago till now. Like you're here, you did all the things. It's
Yes.
so beautiful to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good luck on the next step of your journey. Getting into the law school and finishing law school will be a huge step. So best of luck on your journey
I'm
there.
going to need that for sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. This was definitely a blast from the past, a little bit. I used to see Karolyn on the court, and her sister, who was a little younger than her, used to see them practicing and playing. And just to see her now as an adult, reaching her goals and going above and beyond anything she could have ever imagined as this young player who's just setting out on this journey. I just think it's so huge. I know I probably complimented her a whole lot and got really maybe fangirly. I don't know. I'm just so impressed. I'm so happy for her. She's crushing it. I mean, I just compare myself. When I was 22, I was still really shy and it was like, don't put me on the spot, don't put me on stage. And I love, 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 love how she's like, I love being on stage. I love being in front of people. That's my jam. That's how I get my fill. Like, I love that she's doing what makes her happy. That's the most important thing. And by doing this thing that makes her happy, she's been able to pay off her student loan debt for her undergrad. To be so young and debt free, I mean, that's huge. That's amazing. And she's worked so hard to get there. So kudos to her and her family and her support team for getting her to this point. I know she was disappointed not winning Miss America. From an outsider perspective, just seeing her journey that she won Miss North Carolina and won it very quickly. In her second year of competing, she won Miss North Carolina, and just making it to Miss America. I mean, that's a win for someone like me who will never do anything like that and can never imagine doing anything like that. So, all of us out here that just are like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, we're so impressed that she got there, but I understand it is disappointing to not reach your goals, but listen, in my eyes and eyes of so many other people, she's already won because she's gained so many skills, so many friends and connections. I mean, she can answer questions like, what do you consider a success in America these days? Like, oh my God, if I'm thrown that question, I'm like, getting up in the morning, like all like question mark, I don't know. And so to be able to be so poised and confident and such a great speaker and interviewer and MC, I mean, she's got so many life skills that are just going to fuel her journey as she keeps going and accomplishing all the things. I'm so happy for her. I know I said this, I know you know this. I'm so happy, I'm so impressed. It's so exciting to see. You work with these young girls and you see them when they're 13 and 14 and, they're growing into their bodies and they're learning and they're having fun, but it's a hard time in their lives, an awkward time sometimes in their lives. And just to see them grow, I've seen so many of the girls I used to coach, grow up and become beautiful young ladies inside and out. And they're accomplishing so much, and I'm just watching from the background and going like, go ahead, girls, do your thing, do it all. Like, I'm here supporting you, cheering you on. So I will always be in Karolyn's corner, cheering her on, and just can't wait to see all that she achieves and accomplishes on her next journey to law school. I will add too, I put all of Karolyn's information in the show notes. Karolyn does speeches on nutrition and wellness and self-care and body positivity. So if you need any kind of presentations, speaking events, she does podcasts. You have a podcast, she can be on the podcast. And the funding that she makes from these presentations and workshops, that goes towards her scholarship funding. And that is one way that she will be funding her law school journey too. So please check out her website and her topics. If you have anything that you need a speaker for, please consider Karolyn for that. I also still can't quite get over like 20 seconds to answer this question, answer this very specific question on current events or life in the world or culture questions. Like, I don't know if I would respond well to that. And my episodes usually go very long. So 20 seconds to be very efficient in 20 seconds, that is such a skill that is huge. So kudos to Karolyn and all of the Miss America contestants for learning how to be efficient with your words and with your responses. That is such a skill. And I will add that I do have an impromptu speaking, training, and workshop. In my coaching, I do use the skills of improv to help with thinking quickly on the spot. So I do focus on that a little bit, although, I mean, the 20 seconds response is very micro-focused to the competition, but similar concepts in the sense of like, just not being fazed by any question thrown your way. How can you respond with poise and confidence and efficiency and effectiveness? So please reach out if you have any questions about my coaching or my workshops. Also, if anything resonated with you, let me know. There's lots of juicy bits to Karolyn's story, and let me know if anything came up for you. Also, I love how Karolyn said that whenever she does something, she does it all the way. And I just think, well, sometimes I'm kind of wishy-washy in things I want to do. For example, this is a very small example, but it actually came to mind with this. Like 5 or 6 years ago for my wedding, we had someone do calligraphy for the invitations. And I remember seeing them and going, that's so pretty. I want to learn calligraphy. And I told my friend that, and she bought me, my friend Susan, she's been on the podcast. She bought me a calligraphy set. And have I used it? No. I have this nice set of pens and workbooks and things to do. And I've yet to use it, and it was such a nice gift, and it was such a nice ambition that I had, but I literally did not give 100%. I didn't give any percent to trying because I was nervous to even try and to fail and be like, oh, that was stupid. That was a stupid idea. So I didn't even try. And this calligraphy set is sitting like 2 feet behind me right now, looking at me, and I'm looking at it and saying, maybe it's time to open it and try it again. What's your calligraphy set? What's that calligraphy goal that you set, or you're like, I want to do this thing, and you haven't done anything with it? Here's your reminder to get that goal off the shelf and open it up and try again, because it's never too late to try again, and no better day than today. So feel free to reach out to me, share that goal that you're now working on, or anything that resonated. You can reach out to me at Dayna at Improvly Speaking. That's DAYNA at improvryspeaking.com. I'm also on social media, which I'll be working on not having that millennial pause. I didn't realize that was a thing. So I will definitely try to notice that and make sure I don't have that as I'm working on sprucing up my social media videos. But I'm on Instagram at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan. And you can also find out more about my coaching services and workshops at improvryspeaking.com. And also, I'll add, this is a newer podcast. I'm still within my first 6 months of having this podcast and launching it. So please like and rate this podcast. Give it a review if you can. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, however you can give a rating, please do so. I would love to have that feedback from you. Thank you so, so, so much for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. I'll talk to you next time.